Hey, this is Matt, Eris is Red, and today I'm going to be showing you how you can go about making some weird organic creepy thing like this. Actually, this exact thing. And so we'll be using Cinema 4D, XParticles, and Octane. Okay, so first step here is going to be to generate some geometry, and I like to generate my geometry with XParticles. So let's create an emitter. I've got it set to sphere by default and a radius of 50. Let's, I kind of want to do a tentacly sort of thing, which I seem to be a bit known for now. So let's change our emitter size to 5 to make it really small. And under the emission, let's change it to shot mode. And let's do a small number. Let's say, I don't know, 10. Let's go for 10 for now. And then in our modifiers, I will go to turbulence. And if I hold control, I can click on turbulence and it will put it, but not kick me out of this menu, so I can add more stuff. And so I will also add a drag modifier. And in this drag modifier, in the drag modifier, I will change it to treacle and change that to 23, say. And all the drag modifier does is just adds a substance, basically, that the particles have to move through. And so it will slow them down, essentially. And so then turbulence is probably fine for now. We'll see where we're at. Back in the emitter, the speed, let's drop it down to 80 and let's give a variation of 50 for now. And okay, so in our generators, let's make a trail. Use the emitter as the source for the trail. And let's see what we have. So, okay, that is exactly what we want. Let it run a little longer. Yeah, a little longer than that. Okay, 180 frames. Let's change timeline to 200 just to keep everything within the size. Okay, now I will throw our trail into a sweep, and then I'm going to do something. I'm going to sweep along it with an F. I'll set my F to bold, set it to middle, and then increase or decrease the size of it. So then this F, I'll just label that F, is going to sweep along our trail, as you can see already. So what I am going to do straight off the bat is I'm going to go into details on the sweep and then make the point smaller. So you can see what that is doing already. If I let it play out a bit, it's going to get a bit wonky, but it was about frame 180-ish. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So right on its own, this does not look very good, but actually, yeah, and I can adjust the size of our F if we want. But I like this kind of starfishy kind of look to it here. So this is not the end result we want, though. I want to bring in an OpenVDB mesher, and then I don't want to mesh the particles because there's only, 8 or 10 of them that we actually added. So what we want to mesh is the sweep. So if I bring that sweep into there, because the basic idea is just to make this one singular mesh. And so you can see that the sweep is poking through because the OpenVDB mesher is smoother, and so it's going to be smaller than the harsh edges of this sweep. So let's hide that sweep from viewport and from rendering, so we don't want it in the end. And you can see this doesn't look too good right now, so let's clean that up a bit. In the OpenVDB mesher, let's change the point radius down something like 8, and then the voxel size to something like 2.2. Let's try that. That's getting closer, not exactly right yet. So let's clean that up a bit with filters, use filters, median. Okay, that's pretty good. And Gaussian. And so let's bring our Gaussian down 69-ish and then 68 on the median. Because I would still like to maintain a bit of that detail and not have it just very smooth. But you can see with sweeping with an F or say an X or whatever, and it's actually, it should be parametric, so I should just be able to change this. And then wait for it to calculate. Oh, I might have to step a frame forward for it to, yeah. And so that's really cool. Actually, I think I like X better in this case. Yeah. So, let's do X. So you can see that by sweeping with text, you can get some really interesting kind of details. And so, okay, I kind of like that. And so now here's one thing that I really like to do is, and for lack of a better description for it, I'll just call it iterative design. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make our OpenVDB mesher editable because I like where it's at. Actually, I might clean it up a little more first. Let's, our median and our Gaussian, let's just play with these values a bit to get it a little smoother. I might even add a smoothing modifier after our subdivision surface just to clean it up even more. But, so, let's say we are happy with where this is at. Let's make this editable by pressing C, and then let's just drag that out of there. And I'm going to rename this thing, because that's what we're making, is a thing. Now I can get rid of this sweep, and this drag, and this turbulence. I don't need any of those anymore. So now we've just got our thing. And I also like to do this because with Octane, sometimes the texturing gets a bit strange, and from what I've been reading and from what I've heard from both Insidium and from Otoy, and just commenters on the Facebook groups, is that the OpenVDB mesher, the way it works is that it generates the mesh every single frame, and so it has a hard time maintaining the UV maps because they're different every single time, every single frame. And so it makes things like bumps map strangely or not at all. And I should have done it, but I'll do it right now. Is I'll add an OpenVDB mesher. I found a way around that, is if you go over to tags, say you want to do an animation, but you want bumps to mesh properly, what you can do is go to tags and then transfer velocity. And what that will do is create these vertex maps. And if I had it up, you would see that these vertex maps for velocity give you some UV. I'm not going to claim to understand it because I don't understand UV mapping as well as I maybe should. I do things. I've taught myself, and so that's something that's kind of been irrelevant to me, and so I never really learned 100% about it. But anyway, so that is a way to do it. But if you're just making a static image, this should just be fine. And so we've got our thing here. Now, I'm just going to jump into, let's find a good, so I came from fractal design, I made fractals, hence my old name Fractalic. I don't really do fractals anymore, but something about that kind of gave me a bit of a process because you're creating just some stuff, some geometry, some things, and then you go around and find interesting parts of it. And so it was more of a discovery than it was of creation. But I've kind of taken that mentality to finding interesting pieces of my geometry or perspectives or angles to use. And so I kind of like that, and we might change that, but I'm going to use that for now as our camera angle. So I'm going to go to Cinema 4D tags and add a protection tag on it so I can no longer move this around. So great. So now we want to add some more details to our thing. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to our XP emitter again. This is the same system, but I just deleted, that stuff so we can continue using it. And we'll keep doing this iteratively to add more details to this. So, in the emitter, let's change this now to objects. And our object is going to be our thing. And I could do it to polygon center, but I find that polygon area will just map things a little better. Because polygon center, it will just do, I believe it will just put, let's just switch to garage shading lines by hitting NB. I believe it will put one particle in each polygon. And polygon area, I think it will just take your amount of particles and distribute them evenly regardless of the polygons, I believe. I could be entirely wrong on that. If you know, let me know. That would be great. Okay, so we've set that up, and this will now be our generator for our particles. Let's change our emission mode. Well, let's just change our shot count to a lot more, something like 10,000. And we don't want it to have any speed, because right now what I want to generate is just some stuff stuck to this. I might actually no, let's not do stuff stuck to it right now. Let's give it some spikes. So let's do 10,000 might be fine, and let's give it a speed of 5. And yeah, I'll leave that for now. So we want our particles to come out just a little bit and then stop, maybe. We'll see. Let's just play and see where we're at. So, okay. That, I think, is about what we want, but I think there might be too many particles, so let's do 5,000 instead. Let's put our speed to 1. And then how we're going to make these spikes is by using a trail again. And add the emitter to the trail. And so let's play and see what we have. Okay, great. I have some nice little spikies. Now, since we're going to be working with Octane, let's keep things. I like to use the Octane tag and use hair for things like this because it saves on geometry, and that will in turn save render times. And so it's actually a really nice way to work. So let's right click on our trail, go up to C4D Octane tags and use an Octane object tag. And let's go to hair, render as hair. And then to make these spikes rather than just tubes, let's put our tip thickness to 0.001. And then once I turn on viewport rendering here, you will see that we have some spikes. I think the base is a little too much, so let's put that to 0.5. I'm going to get out of our camera just so I can zoom in a little further here. Sorry, we're on the wrong view there. Hang on. What have I done here? Oh, so we're up front. Oh, I want to change this to perspective. How do I do that again? Cameras. Perspective, yes, okay. And don't know how I did that. Let's get back to our viewport rendering and okay, that's not too bad. I think they need to be a little longer, so let's grow those out a little bit further. Okay, so now we can see our little spikies. And so, I don't know, you could call this hair or whatever. But yeah, it gives it a nice little detail. And you'll see once we start getting into texturing here that those little details are really going to help things. I think they're going too static right now, so let's make them a little wavier. Let's add some turbulence. Okay, you can hear my EVGA 2080 kicking in, which is the loudest graphics card I've ever heard. It is insane Do not recommend. Okay, so let's go back and grow these again. Looks like frame 111. I'm going to pause our rendering and turn off our viewport rendering. And let's grow these once more. Whoa, okay, too much. Let's do strength of 3, strength of 1. Maybe turn down our scale to 30%. That's a little more organic looking. Let's see how that looks. No, don't quite like that. So let's try adding a drag again to deal with that a little bit. Let's go 20%. Actually, one thing I'm going to do here, which I also do quite often, is I'm going to take our source. I'm going to XParticles tag, add a collider tag to it, and let's add friction 50%. So if any of these hairs grow out and come back, they're not going to go back into the geometry, which we don't really want because that's not very realistic. So let's back that up and play again. Okay, let's turn on our viewport rendering, send that back there. It's not too bad, but I think the turbulence is still too high. Can I set it to 0? Yes, I can. Okay. Let's grow that out. And I'm just going to let it play to frame 111-ish to get some length. Well, yeah, I would like some sticking out above here, because then you really see those once we add some fog, some atmosphere stuff, and some lighting behind here. These are really going to poke out. So let's try and get some more of those. Yeah, okay, that's actually looking pretty great. I think we might even be able to up our particle count. Let's go to 7,000, and let's play that again. Let this play out to get these a little bit of contrast on the edges again. Okay. That isn't looking too bad. I kind of like that. I'm not really thrilled about these, but we can move the camera around and find a different angle later. So, okay, let's say that we are happy. I'm happy with that, so we'll go with that. So let us turn this trail to no longer parametric, because I'm happy with where these hairs are at. So let's, again, make this trail editable by pressing C. And let's pull that out of there. I don't think we need this XP trail tag any longer. Okay, and so now, get out of viewport rendering. Now we just have this trail that we can turn on or off. Great. Let's add some more details. So this emitter is already linked up to our thing. So now let's add some stuff on it. And let's give it a speed of 0, so it's not going anywhere. Let's do a shot of, let's say 25,000. Actually, no, I'm going to pick my favorite number. I'm going to pick 23,000. And on our object, okay, and let's just go to frame 1 and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to go to our display so we can see things a little better. I'm going to change it from dots to circles. Pop that back, and okay, great. Now, we could throw on an Octane tag and go to particle rendering geometry. Now, if we go back to our Octane view, you can see that it's generated all of this stuff on here. Problem with that is that we can't really control the size of these. We can control the size of the particles, I believe, with our radius here, but I don't really want to do that. I want to have a bit of variation, and I also want to be able to texture some of these differently. There's a number of ways you can do that, but I'll show you one way that I tend to do it. So let's keep our Octane tag on the emitter here, but let's instead switch off viewport renderings. Instead, let's create a sphere, and I want that sphere to be size of 1, and let's make a second sphere size of 1.5. Let's try that for now. Now if I go to my Octane object tag, in this geometry, you can actually drag the geometry you want here. And so now it will just randomly pick between those, and I can show you that. So if I put on a black on the second one, I'll just make this black diffuse, then I send that out, you can see that it picks just randomly to go between them. So great. Now I could see actually in this that some of the particles are intersecting. I don't want that. So instead of, so let's do a way of getting those to not intersect. Let's go into our dynamics and PP collisions. And I think we can, so they don't go flying around, we can set our friction. And let's just see what happens when we hit frame forward now and go to our rendering again. And we lost everything. Why did we lose everything? That's odd. There we go. Okay. So now you can, well, they're still intersecting. They shouldn't be intersecting. Let's see if we can go forward another frame. Whoops. Let's move that off, and it's all screwed up now, so clear that out. Okay. I just have it on my second monitor now, but let's see if we can go forward a frame. Okay, and you can see them propelling away from each other, and so if I bring this back, that's not too bad. The particle size is still wrong, though. I don't like that. So let's find a way of dealing with that. And here's one thing that I quite like to use, especially for static images rather than animations, is if we go into our modifiers and we go to Control Modifiers and XP Scale. And the one I like to use for static images is Use Shader. And now we can just put in a standard Cinema 4D noise, and this will control the radius of our shaders, and it will control it by 1 centimeter difference. And so we may need to play with this value, but let's go into our noise and change the scale. I like to go somewhere around 500, and then up the contrast so we get a bit of a starker change in radius, radii. I don't know if that's a word. And then clip, let's play so we can see. Yeah, that might be pretty good. Let's jump into our viewport again so we can see. I think we have to play it again. Let's go to frame 4. So now you can see it's got some groupings. Tiny particles down here and a bunch up here. Now I really like that. It gives a bit of variation. Good solid variation to it. Now let's, in our scale, let's change this to maybe 2, and let's play around with our seed. And so that, okay, that's pretty cool there. Yeah, oh, I like that. That's great. So we have a lot of size variation, and that size variation is going to trickle down to these 2, and so we can texture these differently. I don't want to get quite into texturing yet, but this is what we want to do. So I apologize for my noisy 2080. EVGA, my god, that thing is so loud. It is insane. All right. So now that we have this, one problem to do this iterative kind of processing is now I would like to turn this into geometry that I can just texture statically and doesn't have anything to do with this emitter or this particle system. And so annoyingly, this can't really do it this way. So what we'll have to do is turn it into actual geometry. And one easy way to do that is to make an XP generator and lock that to our emitter. We can get rid of this Octane tag, and then we can throw our geometry into this generator. Now it will generate physical geometry based on these. And let's just do that. Let's go to frame 4. It's going to take a lot more processing because it's actually generating geometry in Cinema rather than in Octane, where it's like faked geometry. So we're just going to have to let this play out for a little bit. Okay. Yes, so I just made 25,000 particles, and so that's a fair bit of geometry, so that is lagging my system a bit. Might have to bring that down a bit. We'll see. Yeah, it's really lagging things out. Okay, let me sort that out and I'll come back. Okay, I'm back. So that actually crashed on me because that was too much geometry. So sorry to lead you down a rabbit hole a bit here. But let's, instead of using XParticles, let's use an Octane system to do that, to keep things snappy and with less geometry. So let's use an Octane scatter instead. Okay. Because this will be static. So our Octane scatter, let's do surface, and our surface will be our thing. You can see what that is going to... I'm just going to hide our trail, our hair, because we don't need that right now. And let's do... we can do a lot more with this, with Octane scatter. So let's do, what's that, 1,000,000? 100,000. Let's do 100,000. And let's again add a 1 centimeter sphere. Let's add that to our Octane scatter. We will bring this up for now. And so now you can see our surface is populated with uniform size. I'm actually just going to dock this for now over here, just to make things easier. Save our project. And so we can actually do kind of the same thing with scale. Instead of using the XP scale, we can use our Cinema 4D noise here, and let's do just essentially the same thing. 500, increase the contrast a bit, and bump this out. And yes, I definitely learned this from one of David Aryev's tutorials, which are great, and you should watch them. So, okay. Now, I tend to turn this on, link to distribution. That is not exactly what I want. Let's up the scale. Maybe lower the scale, 0.5, 0.5. That's kind of cool. Let's duplicate this and make it a little bigger though, so we have a bit more size variation. Jump back in. Just gonna zoom around here and find out. That's maybe a little too many. So let's go from 100,000 to 30,000. 30,000. I know numbers. And zoom out and take more clips. Okay. And if you have this on a second window, this is something good to know if you don't know it, but if you hold down Alt, you can actually move around in the Octane viewport. So if you want to, and if you hold Alt and scroll wheel, you can zoom in. I find that gets a little funky though sometimes. It will just like zoom way through things. So I like to do my fine zoom adjustments in the regular live viewer. But if you're trying to do very fine adjustments with, say, Octane scatter, which you can only see in your render window, it's a really good way to focus on little details. So this is actually kind of cool like this. Might even end up doing that. But anyway, let's jump back into, or let's Right, what were we doing? Wanted to see what the scale is looking like. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. I would like a little more clustered things though. So let's see if we can, maybe link to distribution isn't what we want. Let's try some different noise types. See if we can get them to, I feel like that's not showing correctly. Let's send it again. That's a little too much. I'm just playing around to get the look that I want. Something I definitely recommend that you do as well, that I find myself doing when I'm watching tutorials, is if you find something interesting and you're playing along, like making stuff along with the tutorial, but you see something, you're like, oh, I never thought of that before. Just like stop watching the tutorial and just continue on with that idea. Go ahead and make your own thing. I would love if you didn't follow my tutorials to the letter. I don't want to see a bunch of the exact same thing out there. If you want to, sure, fine. Learning, that's a good thing, but like if you can be inspired and try something, make something on your own that's completely different that was inspired by it, then that's awesome. Anyway, I kind of like this. Let's not get too long in the tooth with this, and let's just go with this idea. Okay, more details. We can get rid of our collisions. We can get rid of our scale and our drag. Let's keep the turbulence on for now. And our emission shot, 0 speed. And that's fine. Now let's do something different. Let's add another trail. And we'll make sure that the emitter is in that trail. We can get rid of this for now, so we have more space to work with. I'm going to hide the display of the Octane scatter as well. And get out of our garage shading lines with NA again. And I want to add some stuff, some trails stuck to it. To go between all the little blobs and everything. So let's use trail to do that. And so again, emit a bunch of particles, 10,000 of them on the first frame, and they're just going to stick there, not doing anything. And I want to connect all of these with trails. And so we will go in our trails, and one that I like to use is nearest by distance. And then I like to put it to max number within distance. And already you can kind of see this is getting interesting. So let's put it down to 35, max number maybe 3, because that's a little crazy. But it's not too bad. So why don't we throw on, again, an Octane object and switch that to hair, render as hair. We're probably going to want to put it down to around 0.2, 0.3, and why don't we take a look at how that is working out. So, okay, this is great. Now we are getting some really interesting kind of cobwebby effects, and once we start texturing, it's going to get a lot more interesting with that. But let's jump back to our camera, and that could actually maybe even use more. So in our trail, let's do 50 again, and you can see just as you up this, it's going to increase the search radius for where to join particles together. And if I turn off viewport rendering again, you can see that it's just joining the max number within, what is it here? Yeah, max number within distance of 50 centimeters? I'm not entirely sure what that value is. And this is the max number of particles that it joins together. I don't have a full understanding of it. I just know how it works, so I'm not going to talk like I'm an expert on the subject. I've only had XParticles for 3 months, so I'm still learning it. Okay, so I'm liking how that is looking. And so once again, let's make this editable by pressing C and pull that over there. I'm just going to call this one web, and then these ones are hairs that we have hidden, and get rid of that XParticles tag because we don't need it. And so this is pretty close to getting ready to texture. So I almost want some floaties around this. And so we can use the same system for that. Yeah, why don't we do that? So I'm going to throw so instead on our XParticles emitter, we want now a sphere. And I'm just going to make this explode behind this. And I just want some like floaties, basically. So we can put that to 30. And I'm going to middle mouse click to jump up to these views, middle mouse click on this, and turn on my camera so I know where we are. Okay, so it's there. And so let's just put it behind it so we won't see it. And jumping back to this view. And so we still have our collider on our thing. And we can have a bit of bounce, it's fine. And so these particles are going to explode outwards here and then just be floating around here somewhere. So we can also have that on shot. We can change this, our turbulence back up to strength of 5 and scale of 100. And our emitter is still set to a shot of 10,000. That might be fine. Let's do a speed of 23 for now. Let's see how that looks. And see, all of our other stuff is now just there, and so we don't have to worry about it, which is great. So let's hit play, and I need more. Let's go back up to my default of 1200, double click to make it the full timeline, and just see where these land. Waiting. Okay, I'm gonna get out of my camera. I would like some in front of it as well, so I might actually, yeah, let's move this in front instead. And again, let's play. Okay, I think that is fine. Now, if we turn off our turbulence, turn off our speed, and then go into our emitter and I just forgot where it is. Go into Object tab and then Initial State. And then so I like how this is. These are good. Let's set our initial state. And it will set use initial state. I'll go back to frame 1 and they're already there. And they shouldn't be moving, but they are. Why are they moving? I wonder if they just inherit speed, and so they're always just going to be moving, because they shouldn't be moving anymore. Yeah, I don't know why they're moving. Maybe it's because they're interacting with this, and let's turn off our collider for now. No, they're still moving. That's strange. Okay, well, let's use a freeze modifier. Where is that? That is freeze. Set the speed to 0. Play. Okay, beautiful. So now we can use our semaphore the object tag once again. Turn on particle rendering, geometry, and let's make some geometry. Let's go 0.2, because I just want these to be dust particles-ish. And then go back into our object, drag that in there, and let's turn on our viewport rendering once more. Okay, and it's a radius. Let's try that. Okay, Perfect, perfect. Now, I think I am happy with all of how that is looking. So let's actually, I'm just going to pull this protection tag off so we can move our camera around and find maybe a better angle. Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. I think I'm actually going to split this up because this is getting a bit long now. I'm going to split this into a second tutorial where I do the texturing. So I might end this fairly soon. Oops, I just deleted my camera. Let's delete that. Go back into our camera. Okay, so I want to keep this kind of XParticles only, but I really like to add, I'm going to add a topo wire because Mark Vilson makes amazing plugins and you should totally go buy them. So I have mine up here, sorry, this one, and I am going to, first I'm going to duplicate my thing, and then I'm going to hold Alt and throw it into a topo wire. And I'm going to generate thickness. Let's put that down to 1. Let's put it down to 0.3. And then transform, bring the curvature down because you get that nice look. And then in the topo wire, let's change it to Bezier and subdivide it to smooth those out. So, okay, that's looking really good. I just like that detail. You don't have to do that. Let's bring it up a little. Let that render for a second. Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? It's a detail you can add. I'm not going to add it this time. So I'll just get rid of that. Okay, I think we'll wrap that up as part 1. And then in the second part, we'll get into texturing.